Chair now recognizes Mr. Mulvaney of South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Gordon, thank you for coming before us today. I want to go back to something that I thought I heard you say earlier on in the testimony, which is, I believe you said that the contractor's action, that their conduct in participating in the political process doesn't really, it's not really related to what they're doing for the government. Is that correct?
What I said, sir, was that a contracting officer in deciding who should win a contract will look only at the selection factors in the solicitation, not at political activities or political contributions.
So political activity is not a selection factor?
That's right, sir.
So it's fair to say that political activity has nothing to do with whether or not they'll be fully able to perform their duties to the government?
Certainly nothing to do with whether they're going to get the contract.
Thank you. Well, if it did have an impact on whether or not they could perform the contract, would you consider it?
Boy, it feels very hypothetical. If you told me factor X would make a company incapable of performing, should that be taken into account? Then the answer to that would be yes.
Certainly.
But why would political activity have any impact on their ability to perform?
And actually, Mr. Gordon, I know this will come as a surprise to you, but I'm trying to agree with you on that point. So,
I had a suspicion of that.
Which is why I asked the question, because I'm trying to figure out where this directive is coming from. If political activity has nothing to do with a firm's ability to perform its contract for the government, is it coming from your office? Is this directive coming from the Office of Federal Procurement?
The direct answer is that's an internal matter within the Executive Office of the President that I'm not in a position to discuss. But I think the broader question is, would it help the procurement system to have more disclosure? And that takes us back to the earlier conversation. The hope is that transparency increases public trust, which brings more companies into the competitive process, which improves economy and efficiency. That's the hope.
Well, again, then it goes back to my original question, which I understand you're not going to answer, which is, did this directive come from your office? And I understand that you're invoking a privilege that I'm not familiar with. Is that correct? That you're invoking a type of executive privilege here today?
No, I'm simply explaining that this is a matter of internal deliberation that I don't think it's appropriate for me to be disclosing here.
What department does the OFPP operate under?
OFPP is an office within the Office of Management and Budget, which is within the Executive Office of the President.
Are you the head of that department?
I am the administrator and the head of the Office of Federal Procurement Policy.
Okay. Are you head of the department under which OFPP functions?
As I said, sir, there's not actually a department. It's the Executive Office of the President, and no, I'm not the head of the Executive Office of the President.
Do you have, when we've been asking you these questions today regarding where this directive began, do you actually know the answers to those questions?
I'm not comfortable answering the question, sir. I don't think it's appropriate for me to be disclosing our internal deliberations.
All right. And I think you've explained for us at some length why you're not comfortable giving that. Let me ask you some general questions then, which is, would a disclosure requirement in general, not dealing with this specific draft, would a disclosure requirement put an obligation on members of the public in order to do business with the United States of America?
Yes. We have many disclosure requirements. I mentioned one earlier. You have to disclose lobbying activities if you want to get a Federal contract. You've got to disclose the compensation of your 5 highest paid executives. We have a whole series of things which, frankly, can be quite burdensome for private companies. And we're always looking at the balance. These are often driven, I might add, by statute.
And that was my point. In fact, they're always driven by statute. But the requirement that you disclose your lobbying activities, the other requirements are driven by statute, not by executive order. That's correct, isn't it?
On those 2 specific ones, yes, but there are others that are not driven by statute. For example, organizational conflicts of interest, the requirement for disclosure is driven by regulation.
By regulation?
That's right. That my office is responsible for issuing.
Mr. Gordon, finally, I'll ask you this. Is the violation of an executive order a punishable offense?
That's a question to ask counsel, sir.
Do you believe that it should be?
not in a position to express a view. I would turn to the lawyers and ask them that question.
I'm not asking you. I think you actually have to answer that question unless you're invoking a privilege. Do you think a violation of an executive order should be a punishable offense?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Should executive agencies be following executive orders? Absolutely.
No. Should a member of the public be able to be punished for violation of an executive order?
I'm not sure that you've got me over my depths, but I don't think an executive order would actually apply to a member of the public. An executive order typically is implemented through regulations, and obviously the regulations might apply to the public.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon.